Now I'd like to introduce somebody who has been a lifelong campaigner for the rights of people seeking asylum and refuge, Labour MSP Paul Sweeney.
Thanks, Pinar. I just think it's important to be here tonight just to quickly reiterate that what the Tories are doing is not born of a position of strength, it's born of a position of extreme weakness. And when people are weak and fearful, as they are, because they know that their time in government is going to be coming to an end soon, that they lash out at the weakest in society and try and create chaos, discomfort, distress, and to try and confound and confuse people. And that's what's going on just now. So it's important that we're here tonight to show solidarity with our neighbours and our friends, and to try and reassert the basic principles of human dignity and respect that we should hold so dear. And often we see a lot of ignorance in our midst. Sometimes we see even tonight in this square. And it's important for us to be here without fear and to be here with complete confidence in our arguments, because we're rooted fundamentally on the side of history, on the side of justice. And that is so important. Not only what the Tories doing is it not only a shameful, disgraceful attack on human dignity, but it's also a shameful waste of very scarce public funds and public money that could be better spent elsewhere. So, for example, the ridiculous Rwanda scheme that worked out as something like £600,000 per asylum seeker or refugee would have paid for someone to be on universal credit for 149 years. And just one payment to Rwanda for one refugee would have paid for free bus travel for every asylum seeker in Scotland for a whole year. So that just shows you how ridiculous this whole thing is. It's a total joke. And we shouldn't be hoodwinked into thinking this is any way representing anything like the public interest. The reason why Rishi Sunak is entertaining this carry-on is because he's weak. That he's basically held hostage in the House of Commons by an extremely xenophobic wing of the Tory party, and that if he doesn't pander to their needs and their bigotry and what they see as a pretty bleak and dystopian vision of our future as a country, he'll be kicked out of power like the other prime ministers before him. So that's what we're dealing with here, a position of weakness and a position of fear. But I think we need to have confidence that if we continue to patiently, robustly and confidently assert our arguments about why not only is this mental in terms of the cost inefficiency, but also because it's an affront to everything we hold dear as a society, the dignity we should show to our neighbours, to the people who suffer around the world, the fact that actually Britain as a whole doesn't do very much to help refugees and asylum seekers in a European context. It's actually way down the league table of countries that accept asylum seekers. And actually when they do arrive here, why are they crossing the channel in small boats? Because every other viable means of getting to this country has been shut down and frustrated. So let's not kid ourselves that people are putting their lives at risk because they fancy a jolly, that they fancy coming to live in abject poverty in this city. It's not because of that, it's because they're desperate to reconnect with their families. It's desperate because they need to find some sort of sanctuary. And why are most people coming to the UK? People say, why don't they settle in France? Why don't they settle in Germany? Maybe it's because they don't speak the bloody language. It's as simple as that. Let's remember that Britain's legacy of colonialism is that a lot of people around the world speak English, and it's an obvious destination for them to come to a country where at least they can understand the language and converse with fellow citizens. Isn't it as simple as that? That people just simply want to be somewhere where they're not as disorientated. It's just as simple as that. It's basic human reasons. It might be that their families have been split up and they're trying to undertake this epic journey across continents to find redemption, to find a sense of sanctuary and a sense of reunification because of love. That's what it's about. It's basic human emotions. And to see people who have all that hope and attempt to find security, to attempt to find some sort of salvation, cruelly frustrated at the last hurdle in the way they have been in these horrendous camps on the south coast, is just deeply upsetting, isn't it? So, well, we're not talking shite, sir, actually. We're talking about human dignity here. That's what we're talking about. So maybe you need to learn a thing or two before you come over here and start shouting. So what we want to do is understand that every human life is valued equally here. And what we want to do is understand that it's a waste of money and a waste of life, and let's start getting together and understanding that this is going to start having to be turned over. Yes, we need a general election. Yes, we need to get them out, and it will happen, hopefully sooner rather than later. But what we need to do is build a community where we recognise the value of every single person in our community and everything they can do for us. The fact that we can't even staff our hospitals, that we can't drive our buses, that we can barely pick the litter off our streets because we don't have enough people in this country to do it. And maybe the actual idea of people wanting to be here to, reunite with their families, to reunite with their friends, and to build their lives back from the shattering situation they've felt in war-torn countries, often doing it from a position of total poverty and some of the worst slum conditions in our country, when they've barely got enough to feed themselves. They're not doing it because they want to be here, they're doing it because they've no other choice often, or it's the least worst option for them. And at least we can do is stand side by side with them and say, we understand your pain and we want to try and do something useful to help, and at least maybe one day you'll feel that you've been able to have the chance to rebuild your life and contribute to our communities. And I think there's so many people here tonight who've spoken powerfully about how they've overcome all these hurdles and these barriers and these bigoted attitudes to do something really beautiful for all of us. And I think that basic idea of loving community is what we need to stand fast to, despite all the ignorant comments we often hear from the ill-educated. And we have to be patient with them as well. We can't be angry at them, and we can't get aggressive at them. What we need to do is just be patient and articulate these arguments, because we know the truth is on our side. Thank you very much, in solidarity.
Thank you so much, Paul.